How is everybody? Several of us went up to Brother Guy's Friday night, and he was just thrilled. We had a really good service and a good time of fellowship, which is what it's all about, right? Amen. Can't see very good this morning, huh? That's a sign of getting old, I guess.
Yeah, do we need to get you a bigger Bible?
This one's got a large print, or supposed to have. All right, we are in chapter 14. Am I right? Huh? 13. All right. Can't see. Told you. Huh? I got contacts in. That don't help. That don't help none right here. All right. I may need it, Brother Charlie. What's Judy going to do then? Oh, she's got that big iPad thing. No, she just blow it up that way. All right. Genesis chapter 13. Someone read the first 5 verses.
Then Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him to the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. And he went on his journey from the south even to Bethel, and to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hagan, and to the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abraham called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks, herds, and tents.
All right. Last week we studied how that Abraham, because there was a famine in the land of Canaan, where God had brought him to, went down into the land of Egypt to survive. When he gets there, his wife is taken in by Pharaoh. God reveals to Pharaoh through the plague that, this is this man's wife. And he restores Sarai back to Abram, not Abraham yet, but Abram, and sends them out. Not only does he do that, but he commands everybody, don't touch that fella. He realizes that God is on his side. Now, he went there. My opinion is he went there of his own accord because he could not see a way to survive in the land because of the famine. I mean, if there's famine, that means, again, there's drought, there's nothing for the cattle to eat. So in his mind, he's doing what he thinks is right. And he's, after being driven out from where he knows that he can make it, back to where he came from, I want you to notice, did he ever go without? Did any of his cattle die off? Did he lose any of his camels or his sheep or his servants? Only thing happened was that God blessed him. That's exactly what you and I do. We get in places where we don't see a way, and we take matters into our own hands and get in situations that we shouldn't be in, simply because we didn't seek God's face and ask God's permission to do what we wanted to do. Right? The Scripture teaches us again that that He clothes the lilies of the field, that He feeds the sparrows, and how much more are you the more sparrows? But how many times do we worry about those things. And here's the excuse that we use. Well, I'm only human. Anybody ever said that? Yeah, I'm the one going to raise my hand, I guess, right? We're all guilty. It is the nature of man. The Bible says that we walk by faith and not by sight. And our opinion of that is, well, that's following God. But that's in everything in our life. Right? Everything in our life is trust and faith, regardless of what it is. So Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold, and he went on his journey from the south even to Bethel. Why would he go to Bethel?
Probably to worship God. That's where he's.
This is where the first place that he came to when he came out of his home place is Bethel. So really, he was coming back home from Egypt, coming back home to the first place that he built an altar to God. And here's the thing. When he established this place as an altar to God and a place of worship, not only was it a place for him, it was a place for Isaac worshiped there, Jacob worshiped there. Matter of fact, Rachel is buried here. It's a very important place in the nation of Israel. What are you smiling about? Did I do something? Because I'm pointing at the paper? Huh? All right. So, and unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now, when we think about this, did Abram just come down here and say, all right, I think right here is just a good place that I'm going to build an altar here to God? Why did Abram build this altar in the first place? We have to understand that to understand the significance of it. We know that God spoke to him in Ur of the Chaldees. All right, as he came out of there and God called him out. When he got to this place, God came to him again. I mean, and God's saying, surely, remember we studied that, in blessing I will bless thee. I'll bless them that bless thee. This is where God came to him and told him that he was going to multiply his seed as the sand of the earth. So this is the place that God began to promise. Again, he promised the blessing to leave. Now that he's there, this is your land. I'm going to bless you and going to bless your people. Now understand, during all of this, he still has no son. I mean, the only thing that he has is servants. He doesn't even have a daughter to get a son-in-law. All he has is his servant, and his greatest servant was Eliezer. And he's thinking, here I am 75 years old, I'm coming into this land, I'm going to die without a child, and Eliezer is going to get everything I got. And that's what he tells God. All right? So in the next verse, and Lot also went with Abraham and had flocks and herds and tents. Why does it mention that Lot having these things? Because he was blessed also. Why was he blessed? Because he was with Abram. I will bless them that bless thee. I will curse them that curse thee. So he's walking with his uncle, and God is blessing him not for his sake, but for his uncle's sake.
Even down there in Egypt, he was blessed as Pharaoh. He get him out, let him go, but he blessed him with all kinds of goods Entreated, that's
Entreated, that's what the word entreated means. It means that he gave him gifts. If you'll have it, that really is what that means, that he gave him gifts, which is material things. Because here's the thing, he had taken Abram's wife. All right? So in giving her, not only did he give her back, but he gave him over and above. You know, hey, I don't want you to be, don't be mad at me. Don't call on that God that's done put a curse on my house. All right, someone read verses 6 through 10.
And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plains of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar.
Go ahead and read 11.
Then Lot showed him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other.
All right. So we get to where there is division, not between Abram and Lot, but between their herdsmen. What were they fighting over? The grass. I mean, the pasture land to take care of the flocks. I mean, I was here first. You've got to go on. I mean, we saw that. People fight over land. You know what? They're still fighting over that land over there. I mean, we saw that just in the last day or two, how that you know, when President Trump said, you know, from now on, we're going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. By the way, do you realize what that's done? That just moves us one step closer to the coming of the Lord. So, and the strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwell them in the land. In other words, all these nations, when I say nations, Abram at that time I realized wasn't a nation, but the other people still there. They still, I'm sure they had cattle and other critters too that needed this grass. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. Were they brethren? They were family. They were flesh and blood. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, for if thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right hand. If thou depart to the right hand, then will I go to the left. All right, let's stop here. I want to ask a question. Why had Lot not already left Abram? I mean, he had everything that he needed.
But he wanted more, like everybody.
He knew where his bread was buttered at, or where it was coming from, all right? So he was staying as long as he could. He was that grown-up child, if you'll have it, that don't ever want to move out.
He knew God was blessing Abraham.
He knew that he was reaping because God was blessing him, that trickle-down effect was coming into his life. I'm sure. You think what you want. I'm sure when they sat down to dinner, Lot was at the table. Right? I mean, if you have it, Lot was paying the electric bill, the water bill, the gas bill. Not Lot, but Abram, and Lot was just sitting back, just enjoying all this. And he was being blessed. And he knew that number one, that his uncle would make sure he didn't lack anything. Because remember, he had taken him really in as his son, probably as a teenage boy. And he thought probably, and it's possibly that he looked to him as a father. But there come a time now he's saying, listen, we're going to have to part ways. You know that happens in our lives? I want everybody to understand something. I am happy and content being the pastor of this church. But if God called me to go somewhere else, I have no choice but to go. You hear me? I don't want God to do that. All right? When God told me to move to Ohio in 1999, I was pastoring a church. We'd had 26 people saved from January to July the 4th when God spoke to me. That church was booming. We were having, you think I wanted to leave that? I mean, we were at the point where we was getting ready to go and have to build on to that place. I mean, it was a very big church. The schoolrooms were small. God was blessing, and I'm like, okay. Sometimes you've got to do things that you don't want to do to be obedient. Now, what if Abram said, all right, let's just work this out. You know, your sheep will feed over here today, and my sheep can feed over there tomorrow. Then when we get to the new ground, my sheep will feed, and then your sheep will feed, or my cattle, and then your cattle. Would that have worked? Here's the thing. They had too much. The land could not handle what they had. They had come to the point there was no choice. You know why there was no choice?
The Lord had a different plan.
Because God had a plan.
We won't move unless something happens to make us
All right, let's consider this. Let's finish this, and then I will come back to what I was getting ready to say, okay? Let's go on down to these verses. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and behold, all the plain of Jordan that was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord in the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves, the one from the other. So they're standing there, all right? This is in my mind. They're on top of a mountain somewhere, right? I mean, because if you're standing on flat ground, you can't see very far. So they're at least on a hill. But they're up on an elevated place, and they're looking, and Lot said, or Abram said, if you take the right, I'll take the left. If you go to the east, I'll go to the west. Whatever you want to do, I don't care, but we've got to do something. We can't live like this. We cannot, we're both going to suffer loss. So Lot lifted up his eyes and also all that green grass and all the water down through here. And he turned to this and he saw all the desert here. We criticize a lot for choosing those things. But I'm telling you, there's not a person in here that probably wouldn't have made the same choice. It wasn't that he looked and saw the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. What he saw was the plains that were well watered and the green grass. He knew everything he needed for him and his cattle to survive was over there. And he looked this way and, man, they ain't much. What would you do?
That's what we do now.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
See is what we go for. And if you go pick out a car, except my brother-in-law, he looks at junk. I look at a new one. I mean, that's how we are. If you had a choice, what choice do you have? And we go by our eyesight, and that's what he did. Neither one of them asked God, where do I go? They just seen what looked good to them, and that's what way they live.
By the way, everybody get up and go to the windows and look at Charlie and Judy's new van and go, aww. I'm happy for them, ain't you? Thank God. God bless them. Amen. No, he got a new Dodge. He's one of them old Dodge fellows. He ain't learned no better yet, but practically give it to him, I guess, right? It belongs to the Huntington Bank, Church Harley said. Should have called Rhonda. She'd have financed it for you. Probably got you a better rate. she can refinance it. You're welcome, honey. You're welcome. All right, let's get back to here. Why do you think that God, in my mind, God put all that green grass there to persuade him?
Because he made the choice for him.
He made it easy, but why? Huh?
He had plans for Abram to show what God was able to do, not what was there. God is much as little as much when God's in it.
All this is exactly true, but still it's not what I'm looking for. You see, out this way, again, there's desert and there's people that really God had already determined their judgment when the time is right. You got to realize 400 and 500 years later, God actually punished these people. But down this way, where Lot was going, there was 2 cities that were very wicked. All right? In the book of Hebrews, when it speaks of Lot, what does it speak to about him? His righteousness. So God sent a righteous man down to these people in Sodom. And I know I'm way ahead of next week or week after lesson. I haven't looked ahead. But God's sending this someone down there to tell them and to try to talk to them. There's something better than what you're doing here. You know, God will put us in places, whether it be on the job, whether it be in the hospital, or whether it be in Walmart, or wherever else, to be a light for him. And that's what he did with Lot. God wanted to use him. Now think about it, because when Abram began to pray, Abram hadn't been there. Lot had. All right, Lord, are you going to destroy that city? If there's 50 righteous people down there, are you going to destroy that? No. All right, let's say, God, that they lack 5. If there's 45, I won't. If there's 40, I still won't. God, if there's just 10, if Lot has won 10 people to the Lord, will you destroy that place? Actually, you could say this. If Lot and his wife had converted 8 of them people over to serving God, if Lot and his wife and his daughters were living right, they'd only had to convert 6 unto God. I want you to think about that. And God wouldn't have destroyed that. But instead of, and I know it's coming down the road, instead of going down there and bragging on God and converted them over to God, they converted him. He blended right in. Because when it come right down to it, he's a rich man right at this point. And we'll see shortly, he don't have nothing. When he comes out of Sodom, only thing he's got is himself and his 2 daughters. He loses it all. What profit did it gain him to choose the well-plain waters of where he had to basically do nothing? I want you to think about that. There was no ground to till. I mean, the water was there. He didn't have to dig for the water. The grass was there. It was all, everything was there. All he had to do was sit back and take it easy. You know what that tells me? Work is a good thing. The Bible speaks about idle hands. You know, that they're a curse. When you're sitting around and you're not working and you're not doing anything, it's a curse. We are to work by the sweat of our brow and earn the things that we need. Amen? Now, I realize that sometimes people's physical health or whatever won't allow people to work like they should. But the lazy person, the Bible said if a man doesn't work, neither should he eat. All right. Do you understand where I was going when I was talking about all that? Why Lot chose that? Again, all that appealed to his eye, to his flesh. It was the easy way out. Isn't that what we do? All right. Someone read verses 12, 13, down through 17, 12 through 17.
Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thine seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through this land in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, and I will give it unto thee.
Wow. Now, notice the first time God spoke to Abram was when he got to Bethel. He comes back to Bethel. When they're there, all of a sudden there's strife between the herdsmen. They separate. Abraham dwells here. Guess what happens? Here comes God again. Remember, Lot has chosen everything that he knew was his needs were supplied right there. And Abram's like, okay, Lord. I mean, all I've got is this desert. What am I going to do now? Listen to what God said unto him. And just skip on down to verse 14. We know what God says about, in 12 and 13, what God said about Sodom. I don't think we need to cover that. We know the wickedness of that. But I want to really get to 14. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, listen, Abram didn't go that way. Abram was still there. Lot had left. Now God speaks to him. And after, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, to thy seed, for 300 years. Forever. So if the people of Palestine would read this right here, maybe we wouldn't have any trouble over there today.
So that's what I said. When they argue about this land, the Bible tells you who it was given to and how much it was.
Their thing is, well, we were here first. It was our land before it was yours. Who is God that God can give you what's ours? Sounds like some Christians I know.
That's where I would have been there, Israel would have done what they did.
Now, again, remember, they're standing up here. They're camped on top of this hill. There's strife. Lot leaves and he goes this way. Abram's still here. He can still see the north, the south, the east, and the west. He's still on this hill. And God said, I want you to walk outside and I want you just to turn around. And everything that you see is yours. What's that? Including the land that Lot just chose. You know what? Lot would have been better off if he said, listen, everything I've got, I'll give it to you. Just don't make me leave. All my cattle, all my herdsmen, everything I've got, I'll just give you. Just don't let me leave. But you see, he had great possessions. And he wanted to keep what he had. And he's thinking, now I know a healthy cow, she might have 2 calves if she's really healthy. And man, can you see all that grass? I mean, my sheep may have 2, maybe 3. My goats, you see? But God said, listen, he chose that land, but I'm giving it to you. Now I want you to think about that. If you're looking down through that Jordan Valley, isn't that what the Bible talks about there? The river there? The plain of Jordan? Yep, verse 11. And Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan. Jordan is between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Am I right? That's the river of Jordan flows between there. Is that right, Charlie? I'm pretty sure that the Jordan River comes out of the Sea of Galilee and flows into the Dead Sea. And there's that valley in between there. And God's saying, I'm going to give you all of that. So that if we're looking at that, and that tells me that at one point in time, in that valley, somewhere along that river, you have Sodom and Gomorrah. They ain't there today. And they cannot find where they are. Why can't they find them? What does it mean to utterly destroy something? It means there's nothing left. Nothing left. Now, supposedly archaeologists have found a place over there. Some have said that the sea got bigger and it engulfed and it's covered up where those. The only thing I can tell you is God utterly destroyed it. Where it's at does not matter. Because it's no more. Where it was, because it ain't is. So now God says, I'm going to give everything you see. For the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. First time God talked to him about the stars. I messed up earlier. Now God said, the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. What does that tell us about the nation of Israel? Well, how many of them do you think will be saved? So if it's a number that no man really could number, how big is the remnant? I want you to wrap your head around this, all right? Right now, in that land, every day, every year, thousands upon thousands of people from the world are moving back to that little piece of ground. Thousands upon thousands. All right? In the end, during the tribulation period, there is 144,000 Jewish preachers, 12,000 out of each tribe, that will preach the everlasting gospel of the kingdom of heaven. Who are they going to preach to? The Jews. Think about that. A nation that big that God's got to send 144,000 preachers into it. Now, I don't know how many preachers are in the United States of America. But do you realize that the nation of Israel is not much bigger than Rhode Island? Or New Jersey? Land size wise? And God's sending 144,000 preachers there? What's God trying to do? To wake them up. Here's going to, before God just separated and destroyed, really what we would say the nation of Israel, they had all these false prophets prophesying peace, 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 peace. You know what these 144,000 is going to say? The Messiah is coming. They'll only preach it for 3.5 years, but He'll come. He'll come. Isaiah was a prophet of God. He said He's coming. Ezekiel was a prophet of God. He said He was coming. Malachi said all these old, we've got a handful, Daniel, a whole handful, or 2 handfuls of Old Testament prophets that says that Messiah is coming. But God's going to send 144,000 to tell them He's coming. Be patient. Hold on. Don't give up. I'm here to tell you today, I am not a prophet to the nation of Israel, but I'm telling you to the church today, hold on, He's coming. I know it's getting wicked in this world. Don't give in, don't give up. He is coming. I know they love iniquity or love darkness rather than light. Hold on, He's coming. Not one promise will fall to the ground unfinished.
Brother, that's a little bit hard for me to understand, that 144,000. And where the Bible talks about the two witnesses that will preach, to the whole earth, they'll preach about 3.5 years. The two witnesses will preach. And everybody will see them and everybody will hear them. I don't understand where the 144,000 the preaching and the two witnesses also, or what's the deal there? I don't know.
They're also, and I honestly believe that it will be Elijah and Moses that will be those two great prophets that come back. I mean,
the difference between the two is those two that are preaching is they have extraordinary abilities, right?
Oh yeah, he'll be able to bring call fire down.
There's the
The
difference.
plagues, he'll be able to call the plagues.
it's not that the others. Here's what the word anointed means. Do you know what the word anointed means? It means sent. So all these 144,000, they're anointed. They're sent of God. But these guys have the Spirit of God dwelling upon them. And we saw that in the Old Testament, in the book of Kings, and in the book of Exodus and Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We saw all those miracles that these guys did. By the way, Elisha did twice as many as Elijah, but Elisha's not brought back. It's Elijah.
He asked that before he left.
He asked for that double portion, right. He asked for that. Their story on what they do and how they're slain and how they're brought back to life and lay there dead in the street. I mean, it's... Verse 17. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Verse 18. And Abram removed from his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar to the Lord. Anything significant about Hebron? It was David's first capital, where David chose to set up his throne at first, and he ruled and reigned there. I want to say 15 years before he actually was brought on up into Jerusalem. It was several years anyhow. But it's also later on is a city of refuge. Anybody know what a city of refuge is? There were 6 cities, 3 on one side of Jordan, 3 on the other side. If you killed a man by accident, all right, you could run into one of these cities and you could live there. You could not go out of the city. If you go out of the city, you was fair game. You could live and dwell inside that city until the death of the priest. If the high priest that was in office died while you were there, you were free to go anywhere you wanted to, and nobody could touch you. That was God.
That's like a jubilee.
Just be like a jubilee to someone, But here's the thing. We have a faithful high priest. Guess what about our high priest? He died.
Yeah, but he lives forever.
If our high priest is dead, what's that mean? We're free. We can go anywhere we want to go. Paul said, I'm lawful to do anything. Everything. He said, but everything's not expedient. Everything's not needful. All right? Let's take a break. I know we're a little bit early done on this. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Maybe even on something else.
The conflict that we're going to call this conflict is still raging, going on in your news today.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the same
They're still fighting.
fighting over that land, but
Because Joshua and the children of Israel made leagues instead of utterly destroying them, they're still having problems over it today because they didn't obey God. Did that mean that God did not bless them? No. But you reap what you sow. Right? All right. Let's take a break.